Yo,
Hey, what's up, man?
not much, man. I'm just chilling. Uh, I just got back from a little walk, so it was good.
Nice. How's the weather where you are?
It's just like really wet and like snowing. We had a pretty white Christmas this year, I'd say.
Yeah, it's been
But
weird over here because it was really warm, and then yesterday there were like tornado warnings, and now it's like snowing.
oh, it's crazy, man.
Yeah, it's
We're
bipolar.
feeling the climate change.
Yeah, definitely. Although I will say, having Christmas and New Year's be like 70 degrees, I've never experienced that before. It's kind of insane.
Yeah, so was it like was that really cold? Sorry, I don't know Fahrenheit very well.
So 70, like in New York, I'm used to at this time of year, it's in the 30s. So that's like 0 degrees Celsius. So for it to be,
Oh,
yeah, so for 70 degrees, that's like regular California weather or like spring slash early summer, like depending on where you are. So it's like really warm. Like I'm able to walk around in shorts and a t-shirt like for like the last week, which I've never experienced in December.
holy man, that's I mean, I don't know, you can look at that as good way, like if you're going out and stuff, it's probably better that way, but yeah, it's kind of crazy. Like we had in my area where I live, we had like some crazy floods this last year that we haven't had for like over 100 years, like a really long time. So like I definitely hear you on that with like the weird kind of climate. But I don't know. I like going for my little local walks or I'll hit up a trail, but I'm not like super outdoorsy that in that sense. So like I'll just stay inside.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say outdoorsy, but like when I lived in New York, I would always be in like Manhattan hanging out, doing stuff like that. Now in Tennessee, like in Nashville, I tend to walk around more just because everything's a little more spaced out than like New York. But it's still like I went to the supermarket today and I walked, and that's like probably like 1.3 miles there, 1.3 miles back. But it's like all chill and rainy and kind of suburban slash like I don't know. There's just more trees here than I'm used to. It's pretty nice though.
Yeah, I like to people watch, when I go out for my walks. That's kind of what I like to do when I go out. Just see like especially in the city, right? You could always catch some interesting stuff going on.
Yeah, here there's not as many people, so like I can go on a walk and like I won't see anybody for the whole time that I'm walking, other than people driving by.
Oh, okay. See, I've lived in some pretty small, like fairly small to medium-sized towns. And is this kind of like one of those towns where, you'll go out and you might see like five people, like on the way to the store you might see like five, maybe 10 people, but like not too many.
Well, see here, there's a lot of people. It's just no one's really walking. Like this is East Nashville, which is where I live. It's still like it's a city in its own in its own regard, but you don't see people walking that much. It's mostly people driving. So like I'll go walk on even on the main road where all the stores are, and it's usually just me walking down the road with like hundreds of cars going by every few minutes, depending on the time of day.
Ah, okay. So it's still like a pretty big city then.
Yeah, but like if I walk home, I have to go past like I'm passing like a highway. There's like a train crossing that if the train's there, you either have to jump over the train or go like another 3 miles around to get around the goddamn thing. So it's whenever you see me post videos late night, it's like because I'm just not trying to. If I'm walking, I'm not trying to walk all the way around if that stupid train is there.
I've
But it's a
seen
lot
your
of
I've seen your infamous train crossings.
yeah, and it's interesting. Like this area, it's like it's a lot of houses. It's mostly just like single family homes. But in this area, they're doing a little more construction where they're building more like apartment buildings. But it's still like where I'm from originally, it's all apartment buildings. Everybody's like on a single block. There's probably like 2,000 people living there in all the buildings. Where here, I would be surprised if like in a 1 mile radius that there's 2,000 people. Maybe a little bit like shorter, maybe a half a mile radius, but still like very. It's not densely populated, but more so than most places in the South, I guess.
I mean, with that being said, like, what was the New Year's? What was your New Year's or Christmas or holiday kind of celebrations? What did they look like? Did you do anything interesting? Were you out kind of in the bar scene, or were you spending time with like friends and family at
I
home?
was at bars with friends because all my friends and family, like most all of my family, lives in either New York or Florida, and then I've made friends since I've been here, but I'm still fairly new here in that sense. But on Christmas, I went to the bar. Christmas Eve, I went to the bar, same bar in the area where I walked to, and then I went there for New Year's, and then the two girls that were in that picture I took when I missed the hangout, not the hangout, the spaces where I was. You guys were talking with, I forgot who it was, but the connection kept dropping out repeatedly.
Yeah, I remember that.
So I ended up hanging out with those two girls at like 3 in the morning with some other friends. So it was adventurous, and I ended up getting home very late yesterday, but it was a good time.
Nice. Oh
How
yeah,
about you?
last
Is it
night.
mostly
Yeah, no, I well, you know, I usually go over and have dinner with my girlfriend's parents during the holidays, but her dad really got me into whiskey, so I've been trying all these different kinds of whiskey, and yeah, he can hold his own. I'm surprised because I can drink like a decent amount, but like just sitting there drinking all these different kinds of whiskey, I kind of forgot like how hard it actually hits you until you have to get up and use the washroom or just walk around or something. So I definitely drank quite a bit over the holidays. Lots of different kinds of whiskey, and I think I don't know. I'm it's growing on me. It's growing on me.
do you have a whiskey, like a new whiskey that you've tried that you're like, this is the one that I want to, like, this is my whiskey, the type I love?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, there's this one that I could never pronounce the name on the bottle, but recently I've been able to. It's called Auchentoshan, something like that. But you would never, you would never be able to tell, like you never be able to say what's on that bottle. Like it took me so many tries, but it's really good. It's called Auchentoshan, I believe.
What does the label look like?
It's well the bottle's kind of rectangular, and then it has what does it have on the label? It's kind of like bold white letters. That's what the branding is, Hawkintoshin. And then on the back, I think in the background there's like a boat or something like that, but it's a long kind of rectangular bottle.
Sorry, I'm just posting to the Aavegotchi chat that we're in here. We are talking Gotchi in this Twitter space. Yeah, I asked because when I was in New York, I did an interview with Z-Bot and another Gotchi Gang guy. He didn't want to like dox himself, but he's like a rare Pepe fanatic essentially. And we went to like the lobby of his hotel to like film and live stream me talking to Z-Bot. But they kept getting some kind of really high-end whiskey that started with it was something weird like Akintosh or something like that. The guy, he had an accent. He was able to say it perfectly, or at least, I never heard of it, but it was really good, and it snuck up on me very quickly.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm talking about. It sneaks up on you.
Yeah, because if you're drinking good, like any good liquor that doesn't taste horrible, it's very easy. If you get like, even if you're just doing like whiskey with like ice cube in it, it's not going to be harsh. You end up drinking a little faster, especially if you're there with somebody. It's a social thing. And it's a slippery slope. Like whiskey's dangerous. But if it's good, it's like, you'll survive.
Yeah, I mean, trying all these different ones. I remember there was this one that was 53% alcohol, and it didn't taste like it. Like you could sip on it straight, like it was smooth, and and yeah, that really did sneak up on me.
Yeah, there'll be I remember I had some rum. It was like a Bermudan rum. Somebody had this bottle. It was like a $300 bottle, and it was. I'm not a rum drinker, but it was smooth. Like it was just like a single. Like he would give us like a little tiny ice cube just to cool it, and you just sip it, and it just did not. Like it was so good.
Oh, that
Dangerous.
sounds good. But what I mean, as far as, like we can maybe get into some of the gotchi stuff. I actually have some questions. Like did you have any reflections, New Year's reflections on Aavegotchi? Because I made this like long video. I basically went through all the Medium posts and I stitched together all the little graphics and I kind of did like a little like a 6 minute thing of all the different things we did with Aavegotchi this year. And looking back, I was sitting there at the end when I finished the video and I was like, damn, like, man, when we say Aavegotchi team ships, like
They
I
really
think,
do.
yeah, yeah, they really do. So like, was there anything you saw there that was, or even from your own experience, over the last year, anything that really stood out for you, like some revelations maybe, or
Well, I remember I was watching your video. Great video, by the way. I was going to ask you because it seemed like it was a lot of information. So I felt like you scripted that first and then made the video, which is like kudos to you because that takes time. Um, but just watching that video and realizing like, holy moly, they've done so much in such a short period of time. Like just thinking about going from end of Rarity Farming season 1, which was June, and then all the way up to the season 2. We're only talking 2 to 3 months, but in that time we had the GVM launching like of those auctions, which was brand spanking new. The H3, we came up with rookie leaderboards. There were all of these like votes that came and eight gifts that we went through, like so much progress. And it felt like, thinking back on it, it's only been for me, what, 8, 9 months being in Gotchi game. But it feels like we've been, this has been in the works for years. So like seeing this like year-end montage review that you made just like gave me so much more FOMO because I just realized like, wow, we are standing at like I think the foot of a mountain and we're about to like start journeying on that upward climb, like the real like hockey stick part of it versus like just the standard growth that we've been seeing, which has been amazing. So it makes me feel very bullish.
that's how I felt at the end. I felt like we're on this like big journey that's about to happen, and we kind of have all the tools now falling in place. So it's about now just like using our power to spread the word, and kind of we'll see the fruits of our labor this year. Like really, I feel like all the stuff that I bought this year for Aavegotchi was just like in preparation for all these things that are going to happen. And it's not even like, I mean, Aavegotchi is one of the few projects where I haven't really thought about my actual full investment the whole time, like because I've been so caught up with the progress of what the team's been doing, just shipping constantly, that there's always been that like reason to buy more stuff. There's never been a reason to kind of back off, and um, I think looking back this year, I'm like, I don't have enough gotchis, I don't have enough land. I'm like, I need more Ghost because I guess I'm starting to see all the utility of Ghost. And I mean, you're right. Like I had to go through each one of those Medium articles and kind of script out a little thing and a clip and then, narrate the one clip and then stitch them all together. So it was actually like 30 or whatever little videos put together. Um, but doing that, I actually went through a lot of the Medium articles and like it gave me a lot more of a fuller kind of like view, like it's kind of like this whole year we were standing next to an elephant and it's like we couldn't really see that it was an elephant. You could just see like parts of the elephant, but just all looked gray. And now at the end of the year, looking back, you look back and you see the whole thing and you're like, holy crap, like this is going to be a big deal. And then also just all the things that I learned along the way because like I'm still relatively new to crypto, even though I've been around with Aavegotchi since almost the first launch. I'm still pretty new to crypto, but I've learned so much just through Aavegotchi, and it's kind of incentivized me to look and learn what a DAO is, or for example, um, how to like basics of like yield farming or like how to swap my tokens. Like a lot of those things were things I didn't normally do, but I had to get familiar while I was like learning about Aavegotchi. So it's kind of like a side effect. I learned all these things. So that was like my biggest, I guess, realization at the end of the year was like, holy crap, look at all this stuff that I learned just from them shipping all this, and like what are things going to look like in the future? Like, I don't think I can really comprehend all the growth that's ahead of us. But yeah, it's going to be crazy. I'm looking forward to rentals mostly in the short term.
I don't know if do you follow Beanie Maxi on Twitter at all? He's like a big NFT influencer.
Yeah, I know Beanie. Yeah.
So Beanie today and Bearded, I think, commented a message to him or like sent a comment at what he put. But he was basically he made a reference to being long on gaming assets that are rentably can be rented on chain. He's like that's going to be a big thing this year. And he said that there's a project that he's invested in early that he's been involved with for about a year that he thinks is going to do this right. And he didn't say what the project is because he doesn't want to front run it. But I think he's talking about us because the timeline makes sense. I don't know of any other project that's talking about doing on-chain rentals, fully on-chain rentals, permissionless, trustless on-chain rentals, how big that is. So I saw that today and I was like, there's a point during the patches, where the bailout mania that we went through, where I became a little bit more hesitant about things because I felt like I just had like a negative feeling towards things that were potentially happening. And then so I sold off some Aavegotchi stuff, and then immediately bought back in almost everything. More. I sold off stuff at a profit and bought more gotchis. Like I bought a 553 BRS naked gotchi, a 540, which are my two highest now. I bought more land. I bought more wearables. And even now, knowing this, it's like I still don't have enough. And I feel like there's only so much more time because once that white paper releases, this is going to get real very quickly.
Okay, that's a good point. And I think what I'm noticing, like, because I know you've traded NFTs and stuff too, so it's kind of like from what I've noticed is your approach that you take towards other NFTs is a lot different than when you're buying Aavegotchi stuff. You're looking at it kind of almost in a different way. Whereas, the NFT stuff, you see kind of like the hype and you have to kind of um, take your profit, as you say, take your profits when you can, right? Whereas with the Aavegotchi stuff, it's kind of like the runway is just like so long that we can't even see the end of it yet.
Yeah, I definitely feel that way. I just think of all the stuff that we don't realize that's happening in our system with Aavegotchi. That like a good example would be like I have a plot of land in District 27, one of the reasonables in the Fixcraft Square. The floor for that right now is 3,900, something like that. Ghost. I have one listed for 9,000, and then there's part of me that's like 9,000 ghosts for this parcel in the middle of Pixelcraft Square is FUD. That's not going to be, So I'm more worried that like this is one of those like seeing the trees but not the whole forest. Like I could sell stuff and be profitable, but with Aavegotchi more than anything else, even more so than with oil stocks probably are as long if anything, but the idea that like I don't want to fumble this bag. Like I could see myself, even if I took profit now, I'm selling way too early. Because if we're talking, Aave is going to be doing potentially a browser, potentially their own social media network. So if they're doing their own social media thing, I have to think that the infrastructure that we're building here, due to the participation of people like Mark Zeller or the CEO of OKX, I think we're looking at you can't underestimate how big this is going to be because I think the plan is so much larger than we actually realize. Just like when the Gotchiverse light paper was dropped, like my expectations of what they were going to deliver versus what they actually delivered blew my mind. And I think we're in that kind of situation because we have people like Jesse involved and Dan, and it's a long-term play. I can't I'll flip everything else except this. It's just not the thing to flip.
Yeah, it's almost like with most projects, you're betting on the jockey, or you're betting on the horse more often. But here it's like we know the horse is good. We're betting on the jockeys, and they've kind of executed so many different things this year. Um, I forget what I was going to say, but I guess basically it comes down to the fact that, the people that are on board, this isn't their first time, like with Jesse and Dan with the things that they're doing. So like I totally trust kind of a lot of the decisions that they're putting out there. And even when the Gotchiverse light paper came out, I was blown away with all the other things that I didn't expect, like the lore and then the great battle. And, you could tell these guys have like a really strong sense for like what makes a good game. So I don't think we're going to be let down. But on the asset side of things, um, I think we're going to see so much more utility with especially wearables and the gotchis themselves that will come out that we don't really consider just yet. Like I think it was mentioned a few times in one of the roadmap blogs that I was reading last night. One of the older Aavegotchi blogs that there would be a lot of there would be like gating with wearables. So like you might be able to go to like certain parts of the land or people's land. You might be able to get access to certain experiences based on the wearables that you have. And that kind of goes back to the social media aspect of it, is imagine if these wearables were somehow like part of this social media infrastructure. And then like what kind of cash flow would that generate? And is that cash flow going to easily cover the amount that the wearable costs right now? Like this is getting a little bit technical, but like say you bought, say you bought a legendary item for 600 ghost, but then it was later found out that that legendary item was actually needed for some to access some part of the Gotchiverse or like be able to spend a certain amount of time somewhere on some parcel. That's value you can't really price in right now. But I'm sure, like you said, as soon as that white paper comes out, all that stuff gets priced in. And I can't see them not adding a lot more utility, especially to the wearables. When there's kind of like this back burner second option also to possibly add like skins, which I'm actually open to as well. Like if we add skins, that'd be pretty cool. As long as it doesn't add BRS or it doesn't really have much utility, aside from just like a flex, that'd be pretty cool, right? But then that would also like, what do you think that would do to the price of the wearables currently if we did have something like that come out? Like, do you think that would negatively impact it, or do you think it would actually help the price or back the price of wearables because they have that utility?
I think it's hard to say because like the idea is that in any case, when you increase supply, demand will decrease because there's going to be if there is no vanity wearable right now, then your only option to have a non-naked gotchi is to buy the cheapest thing you can get, which would be the commons. So if people are coming in and there is an option where they can get stuff for free, I think that does take some pressure off of the bazaar, which could cause prices to drop. But the key thing that like kind of makes it, this is why I say I don't know, is because like you said, these wearables will have utility. So like, yeah, I can get something for free, but it's the same difference between buying the common or getting the legendary. If I can afford the legendary because it gives me 5 BRS, 10 BRS boost for each item plus whatever small traits and potentially like you said that gated experience. If I have a bigger bag, I'm willing to buy that more expensive stuff. So I don't know. In terms of mass adoption, it's probably a great idea because you get people to get skins, they can create their own stuff. But I don't know if that affects, because I feel like most of us who are in the game now, we would buy whatever. We buy whatever, even just common. That's not out of a price range right now. But for other folks coming in new who want a lower entry point, it might make more sense to give them a free option.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody, the first thing they think about when they buy their gotchi is like, I need to make mine look a little bit different. You know, um, there's only a few kinds of, there's only a few different aesthetic traits on an Aavegotchi that can make it unique, and that's mainly the eyes. So I think most people, when they buy their Aavegotchi, they're like, oh, okay, I got this Aavegotchi, but there might be like 20 or 30 or 50 Aavegotchis that look almost identical. So you want to be unique. You want to stand out in a way. And I think that's a way to maybe let that happen without um, without being inflationary, because that's kind of what we want to avoid. Is I mean, that's the other thing that I've been thinking about is if we do implement something like this eventually, whenever we implement it, it's actually going to take the pressure off releasing too many wearables. Like we don't have that problem right now. In fact, I think we maybe have too few wearables compared to Aavegotchis, especially if we're going to do another haunt. But at some point, if people keep requesting too frequent wearable drops, or there just are too many wearable drops, it might affect the value of the wearables over time. But that being said, I was looking at some of the floor prices between mythical, legendary, rare, and uncommon, and there seems to be a big gap almost between the common, uncommon, and rare, and then the legendary and the mythical. There's actually a significant like difference in price if you take into account the quantity of things. So I think there's a lot of room to grow with especially wearables, and this is not financial advice by any means, but I've been looking at the end of the year, you look at your whole portfolio to see if you should move anything around. And I personally, I hold a decent amount of wearables compared to everything else, just because I really do think there's a lot of value like left to be unlocked. And that's not to say with Aavegotchis there isn't a lot of value to be unlocked, because even with Aavegotchis we got the core meta of the game is not even out yet. So imagine all the shuffling that's going to go on once we figure out exactly what the wearables do, and then what each of the Aavegotchis, kind of like these archetypes that we talk about, like what does this Aavegotchi, what is it going to behave like? Because you, let's say you have like 20 Aavegotchis, and you find out that like 70% of them are really good for farming in the Citadel. That might change how you decide to handle your collection. You might decide that you want to rent out the majority of your Aavegotchis. Whereas, let's say you have your 20 Aavegotchis and you find out 75% of them would be really good, like either battle gotchis or like mage gotchis, or they have some magic ability. You might think differently and maybe rent those Aavegotchis out for shorter time periods for like specific battles, or like you might start some sort of a scholarship program. So I feel like there's going to be a lot of shuffling that still has yet to happen for those people that maybe feel like they missed out on a deal. I feel like there's going to be a lot of paper hand opportunities even after the white paper comes out.
Well, see, I feel like we're going through that paper hand cycle now. I mean, we all talked about it prior to the end of the season, like sometimes how that dip, at least from the one season that we did experience prior to season two, there was that dip, and I've noticed it, but I'm in a better position because I did sell a whole bunch of stuff. I sold, what, five gotchis? I sold five gotchis, but I got one of them was a double mythi, which was hard to get, to let go, but it was my only one. But it was also like it enabled me to buy like another two gotchis, which I thought was a better play. But I've actually had the liquidity to buy this dip, and I've been buying very aggressively wearable raffle tickets because I think they're underpriced, and wearables where that, and land where I can. I bought some cheap gotchis also that I think that were steals on the bazaar. But I feel like even with once that white paper comes out, it'll be easier. I think the most important thing that we have to think about right now for the health of our system, and like which will be a huge pump to everything, is the perception and the reception of the liquidator in the community, not just by us, but by potential new players. The mechanics of the liquidator will be so important to the health of the game because that's what's going to lead to mass adoption. When people know that they can get a burnable, playable NFT where they can earn. If the mechanics of the liquidator work out well, the rest of it's all going to just go great because it gives an entry point for people to flip up. With the wearables, like I think we were talking about the skins, and I was thinking about it, and I like the idea of the free thing, but then I thought about like we still need to have wearable auctions because that's what's going to pay for rarity farming, which is a good segue into this, which we could, I don't know, some people, I've heard people talk about the idea of like, doing away with rarity farming and the focus being all just like Gotchiverse gameplay. But with, season 3 potentially upon us, that wearable auction will figure in big because it'll give us whatever level of rewards we're going to get for this season.
Yeah, actually, that's a good segue right there. I'm just actually looking at the season 3 forum right now for the Q1, a proposal for Q1 rarity farming, and I think I think you made a good move there with, especially kind of buying back in with wearables, and you bought a couple more gotchis, so you know I don't want to see rarity farming go away by any means. Like, I think it might change going forward. Um, but I think it's a good idea to have rarity farming come out around the time when the Gotchiverse like officially launches. So like, hopefully in a month or so, maybe a couple weeks to a month. And it's a great way to get people into the game, start learning about the different rarities of these Aavegotchis, and also see that they can earn some passive income because it does kind of put some attention on wearables. But right now, I think we have 1.5 million in Ghost already funded for season 3. So if we have a GBM wearable auction, which someone had already mentioned, that would put us at 2 million Ghost for season 3. But I think the big debate right now that's been going on with rarity farming is with the Kinship and how the Kinship boards should be handled.
I think also XP. They were talking just basically rookie leaderboards, which is why when I sold 5 H2 gotchis, none of my H1s out of the 13 that I had, out of the 14 that I had. But the ones I sold them because going forward, if we don't have a rookie leaderboard, they're basically like XP mules from, the whole ambassador thing. If I can't get the passive yield from rarity farming because of the high XP in a rookie leaderboard, the value of those gotchis to me have diminished. So I was able to sell them based on how much XP they had because other players want XP, and I was able to buy in lower XP, lower kinship, but much higher BRS gotchis. So I'm at 15 gotchis now instead of 17, but the ones that I have now are higher BRS based on that change in the rookie leaderboards. So I know Cookie Thief's proposal, which I think has reached quorum, Coder Dan pointed out, but one thing that was not really spoken about was the rewards. But the other thing is that the proposal straight up was to propose no rookie leaderboards, which I've seen in our forum in Discord that some players who are new, Season 2 H2 Gotchi owners, that they would be left at a disadvantage because the rookie leaderboard kind of, the reason we put a rookie leaderboard was so that OG Gotchis weren't too OP in rarity farming. So now it would kind of, unless we extend the leaderboards that have more players, top 7,500 or whatever, the H2 Gotchis might not be in favor of that because they are going to be at a disadvantage to H1.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I was kind of thinking more along the lines of, should we provide like more opportunities to change our kinship, like to increase kinship in some way? Because I feel like that would, well, first of all, it wouldn't address XP, but it would address the fact that, if you did start later in the game, you would actually have this chance to kind of earn more kinship through some sort of gamified, I thought of the idea that maybe if you collect a certain amount of alchemica, you get kind of like a kinship multiplier for that day or something like that. Like maybe something like that would kind of level things out. Because I know on the other end of things, there's also people who just bought a gotchi very early on in the game and, locked it up in an auto petter, and they're really not really interacting with the Aavegotchi or the game in any way, but they're still kind of just rocking it on the kinship leaderboards. So maybe I don't feel like that's really should be incentivized in any way. Like, it's cool if you want to put your Aavegotchi in an auto petter, but like I don't think there should be um, how do I say this? I guess I don't think there should be like disincentivizing. We should be disincentivizing two different groups on both ends. It's better that we have chances for both groups to be able to compete and actually win, like move past each other if they're interacting with the game a little bit more, because I feel like that's what kinship is rewarding.
That made me laugh though. I was thinking about because it sounds like the argument of a organic petting maxi. Like, but I agree. I mean, I'm not against. I've never been against the bot petting because it's Web3, and that's just how it kind of goes. It's the innovation. And previously, it seemed like it was mostly like the narrative was that whales were the ones using auto petters. But now that we all can use an auto petter, it does add this, it democratizes things in a sense because we can all reach very accessibly for auto petters. I think I made a suggestion. It's actually in the DAO forum. It was like from months ago where I was trying to pitch the idea of a fractionalized kinship rewards for playing mini games. So kinship right now is just based on petting. I would love to see some kind of mechanic either in the game or in the mini games, the arcade, that the more you interact, the more you play, you get fractional kinship points. So yeah, the whale could come in and they could get the auto petter and then pay and consume all of the potions they want to get a high kinship score. But if you're a dude grinding in the arcade or you're playing the game all day and you're earning those little fractional points, you should be rewarded. Same thing with XP. It can work the same way. So that gives it the whale will always have a way to win, but the little guy can even the score at least through effort, which I think is like, for me at least, that seems like the American dream, but we're also talking about the Gotchiverse. It's the Gotchiverse dream.
I'm on board with that. I totally I'm on board with that because as long as you have like if someone wants to play the whale game, like there's nothing wrong with that, like you said. But there has to be some sort of way, just like with the liquidators, right? There has to be some sort of way with the kinship where you can kind of grind your way up the board if you have the time and the dedication. And oh, actually, what I was going to say earlier that I forgot, the thought just came back to me, was actually what you were saying on Polygon with the liquidators. And the gameplay is, the quality of the gameplay is going to be affected by how many of these liquidators we get participating. But I was looking the other day, and Polygon has 120 million addresses on it. It has like a significant amount of. Now I don't know if they're unique. They're probably not unique, all unique addresses. But if you think about it, even if it's like half of them are unique, that's like 50 million, different people that are using Polygon. And let's say like even like 10% of those, they get into Aavegotchi. That's a lot of liquidators, right? So I think as long as the barrier to entry is low, which it will be, I think, we're gonna see like a massive amount of people just trying to play and steal our Alchemica.
Yeah, one thing that we were talking about it earlier about the idea of DAO governance and the game and all the, the Gotchiverse and some of the most exciting things about it. And there's one piece, I think it was during your video I noticed it, that like got me super hyped that I never really thought about, that we as a DAO, as a video game DAO, we want to call ourselves that, are going to own our own decentralized exchange inside of our game. We're going to have a place where we can go and swap Alchemica and other currencies. And, that fee is also going to be channeled, part of those fees will be channeled back to the DAO. And it's like, that's really like, that's mind blowing because it is like, people are talking about like, I see all these other projects and I'm part of other projects and they're all like in the baby steps of like the things that Aavegotchi's already, shipped. But thinking that we're going to have our own DAO, we already have our own marketplace that's like, as far as I've known, I don't think there's ever been a security issue with our marketplace. And we're, being on Polygon helps all this because it's so much faster and easier. I'm most excited for that Dex that we get to own, but also like I'm excited about the idea of Coinbase being able to onboard people to Polygon in a much simpler way. So then we don't have to think about like as ambassadors, how do we create a video so people know how to add Polygon to their MetaMask? No, they're not going to need to do that because if they have Coinbase or other wallets that already have like on-ramps from fiat direct to Polygon, it's going to be very good for us. But that Dex, man, like a community-owned Dex, I don't think there's anything like that in any other game at all. Like, it's crazy.
I'm so stoked on that, especially with that you're gonna be staking on the Dex and you'll be getting this glamour token or glimmer token. And I think those are going to be really valuable over time, especially for those early stakers, those early LPs. So that's one of the bigger parts of the game that I'm definitely looking forward to.
See, I wonder what kind of APY will get on the Dex. Because if you're staking Ghost, even simple staking Ghost, it's like 46% APY at this point. So I wonder what on a Dex like that, especially when we have more players and more people trying to build installations, like the kind of return you're going to get on that kind of, I guess, LPing.
You know, go ahead, Dr. Wagme. How's it going, actually, man?
Hey
How's
guys,
your new year?
good to check in with everybody. Things are good. Lot to look forward to this month, hopefully. So I'm excited about that. But yeah, I'm pretty excited about the decks, right? So like, I think it'll be fun to like. There'll be a lot of trading, right? A lot of people like buying and selling stuff. So that means trading fees. I'm really hoping that our LPs, will capture a lot of that. Like it'll be fun to like manage those fees. It doesn't really feel like the DAO needs more funds right now, but once we start using those funds, like it's going to be even more of a powerhouse with how much money we have to do stuff with. But I am really curious what the Glimmer token is going to be valued at, and like it's just like or Glamour. It's like one more way to make money in this game, and like whether we'll sell that or like I know you can sell installations, right? So like, could I just make lots of installations and then sell those, and I can do it quickly because of my Glamour, and it's just like one more complex way that this economy is going to be a lot of fun to engage with.
Somebody had made an interesting comment a while ago saying that a lot of these guilds that have purchased large amounts of land, the first thing they'll want to do is actually bypass some of that initial channeling process because, the initial channeling is somewhat inefficient and immediately just start to build or acquire as many of these harvesters as they possibly can. And obviously you'll need reservoirs too. And then also remember that each harvester is going to be its own unique type of harvester for each alchemica. So if you want all four types of alchemica, you're going to need four harvesters. And then if you want to increase your yield, you're going to need maybe like 8 harvesters or 12 harvesters. So I feel like there's going to be a really, really steep demand for harvesters initially, and then almost immediately after that, probably reservoirs, because you'll need space to keep all this stuff. So I think that's me personally. That's what I've been kind of speculating about.
Yeah.
And the price action around Alchemic the first couple of days is going to be wild. It's going to be a lot of fun.
See, I wonder, I would love to see this white paper and then be able to see price discovery on installations like harvesters and reservoirs. Because in the real world, I mean, it depends on where you are in the real world, but I feel like the land often is more valuable. Like if you have a home and you upgrade your kitchen, the whole entirety, the value of your home goes up, a certain amount. But it's usually more than what you paid to actually do the repair, the installation. So I wonder if you add harvesters and reservoirs, how greatly that's going to affect your land. Because once they're installed, you can't move them around and you have to sell them with the land. You can't just once a harvester's on your plot, on your parcel, you can't take it off and then resell it to somebody. So I wonder how the dynamics of the real estate, the pricing, the new little market searches, like filtering that's going to be involved looking at, like, I want this spacious plot, but this one has 10 harvesters and 10 reservoirs. What is that valued at? How much is it, will it be like a naked Gotchi that's like a 550 and you add 5 legendaries, now it's a 600. Is it worth the floor price of a 550 and all those wearables, or is it worth more as a collective because the BRS itself is higher? So it's like trying to figure that out will be fun.
It's almost going to be like, you're going to have to look at each parcel individually and somehow figure out what the APY in Alchemica would be for that parcel. So you could have a few different parcels side by side, and not all three of them wouldn't be equal. They'd all each have their own different yield, and that would probably be priced in to the initial price of the parcel, right? Because imagine you can just buy this parcel, it's kind of out of the box, ready to go, that someone spent their time and energy, they built it, and they know that it can bolster like a decent amount of yield, or it can provably on chain, because remember, everything's on chain. So I'm sure you could look at some of the metrics on chain and see how much Alchemica is being produced. I'm sure there's going to be something like that eventually that gets implemented. So there'll be different ways to look at a parcel as well from like the buyer's perspective, I think.
Okay, so we're talking about the Gotchiverse. We're talking about its impending launch, hopefully within the next month. When do you think is the ideal time to do a season 3? Like, should we do a wearable auction prior to season 3, or do season 3 at the start of the Gotchiverse, or a few weeks into it? Like, what are your thoughts?
I think it'd be fun to like maybe right after this next like wearable raffle and auction, if we have both, I don't know, but like right afterwards, because that should mix up the meta and mix up the leaderboard a little bit. But I think we're close to having the money for it, so I'm for doing it in quarter one.
But I think someone here in the DAO forum had said we have 1.5 million in Ghost already funded for season 3, and if we have the GBM wearable auction, that'll get us pretty close to that 2 million mark for season 3, which I feel like would be a pretty I believe that's what we had last time, right? Or I mean, it is a pretty generous amount for rarity farming, I think.
Right. Yeah, that's what we had last time. And I think a con is, that sets us up to be pretty dependent on Haunt 3 to fund the next one. But hopefully that works out, right? Hopefully the game is successful. We get a lot of users. It's clear we need more gotchis. And then a Haunt 3 could fund the next rarity farming. And I think that's how we pretty easily convince the whales to vote for Haunt 3 is they also want rarity farming to happen. So I think that the sooner we do the next rarity farming season, the sooner we'll be able to convince whales to do Haunt 3.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. And I was going to also mention, I guess if we do rarity farming like sooner than later, it might be a good idea to put off because the other conversation is should we implement ARS for season 3? And as much as I want to see the ARS be implemented, I'd rather have them put a lot more thought and time into that process after we've launched the Gotchiverse because I'm sure that's going to take its own efforts to kind of organize and implement. And I think it needs to be just a really well thought out process, even though we got some discussion going on right now. But like, I'm totally for kind of keeping the framework of rarity farming that we've had, but also maybe implement some kind of way that you can grind your kinship and increase your kinship as the underdog.
And I think we really need the white paper, just like for so much of our discussions, but this too, right? Because how exactly is kinship going to work and how exactly is XP going to work? Like that plays into these leaderboards really big. And I'm still a fan of trying to reward prospective engagement, like whether that's with rarity farming or through this like separate $4 million they have set aside from like all the land raffles that's going to be towards incentivizing the Gotchiverse and engagement there. Like, what's the plan with that? I think we need to know that piece of the puzzle too a little bit before we design the next rarity farming season.
If we had to make a guess, we're going to make because you're recording this, Hefe, so we can look back on it. We'll make a friendly wager, nothing up, but if you had to guess, how many pages do you think the white paper is going to be if you were to print it out from a regular printer? I would say, I'm thinking it's going to be somewhere between 15 and 30 pages, but I think that might be too conservative.
I was going to say somewhere around 20 to 25 pages because just given all the elements of the game, and even that, I think there might even later be a white paper V2. So this might be like V1 of the white paper too, you know?
Yeah, I agree with Hefe. I think it's going to be around 30 pages, and it's not going to include like the grid stuff or the PvP interactions or some of the wearable utility stuff that we all really want to know. But it's going to be a lot of fun to go through that. And I'm still kind of hoping they do a live out loud reading because that was awesome for round 1.
Yeah, now I remember that. That was a lot of fun. I would love to have that. I almost want them to tell us the PvP thing though, because I feel like we'll understand moving around in the Gotchiverse like what the utility of certain wearables will be. But I think the big, like the wearables, where the big money's going to be, in my head at least, just as a game player, is going to be in the PvP. I want to know that if that, like, my little pump drink's going to like do something to make me a better fighter, or that my gold crown is not going to just like, be an aesthetic thing that's going to like make me slower while I'm moving around in the Gotchiverse. Once I know that, I think it gets, then we talk about the people who like ape into stuff. That's when we see people like, wearable floor prices going nuts for stuff that's combat related.
I want it too. Man, it's so complicated. Like, because I don't think that those early items like lined up with what like they said stats were gonna do so far. You know what I mean? Like the legendary wizarding staff looks to make you like better with like melee combat right now, and so how they can align those stats with like their utility and the lore behind them, I think is going to be really complicated. So I just don't know if they put all the time into that versus getting like the farming ready. So I'm trying to set myself up not to be too sad if it's delayed.
I'm hoping one of the details we do get from the white paper is how these individual stats will actually work for the Aavegotchis, because they have actually said before, it might have been during the stress test actually, Coder Dan had said every trait of an Aavegotchi will have some purpose in the realm eventually. So like that tells me eye shape and eye color will eventually have purposes too. My speculation with eye color and eye shape is it's going to affect, and this is a 100% pure speculation. Like I'm not even taking anything anybody said. This is just like what I think. I think the eye shape and eye color is going to affect how far you can zoom in and out of the Gotchiverse. So like if you have a really like, common eye shape, you might not be able to zoom out that far compared to like if you have double myth eyes, you might be able to like zoom out on the whole map or something like that. You know what I mean? I think that'd be pretty cool. But that's pure like just me kind of just thinking up some things. But I definitely think we're gonna learn some of the details of the white paper. I mean of the Aavegotchis, their individual stats in the white paper.
I love that idea, by the way. And how cool was it during the test to be able to zoom out like that? I did not anticipate that function, and I loved it. And I love the idea of giving eyes like some utility, like whether it's like how you can see through fog of war, or you can zoom out or zoom in. It'd be cool to have something.
Yeah, and I mean the other thing would be I want to see some more details on the SDK and also um, get more kind of maybe we can see kind of what the UI would look like for lending and renting. That's another area that I'm kind of been curious about. We have some like vague details about it, but I want to see like is it like Comet Swap? Because like I've used Comet Swap in their lending and renting for like their ships, and it's interesting. I think Aavegotchi is going to develop something a little bit more user friendly, but uh, I'm curious to see what that's going to look like as well. But I think we'll get those details all in the white paper, like you said. It
You,
just
you know, it's,
go ahead, go ahead.
I wish Bearded would raise his hand because I was gonna mention him because me and him have been talking, and he's actually been able to look at the Gotchi Lending code that's on GitHub. I didn't know they already had it up on the repository. So it's like we're so close to it, like it being there and like ready. That's gonna be, and like Bearded, I saw that you interacted with Beanie Maxi, and I'm like, I really do think he might be referring to us. As that project that has on-chain lending and that he's been involved in for almost a year. So very excited for that.
Hey guys, how's it going? Thanks for calling me out there. Always exciting.
Yeah, anytime. That's what I do.
Sorry, what was the? I was in the middle of doing something else as well. You were asking about whether I had any insights from looking at the code on the GitHub.
Yeah, you were saying that you looked at the code on the GitHub for the Gotchi Lending. So I would love to hear more about that from you since you know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So there's a, I mean, anytime they have this, they have sort of like when you're, for anybody who's worked on a project on GitHub, there's like different branches that you can work off of, right? So if somebody's working on implementing some new feature, they can make a branch. And if the project makes those branches public, we can go in and we can see what they're working on. So so right now the Gotchi Lending branch is public, and so anybody can go and look on their GitHub and see what they're doing. And so it's cool going in and looking at being able to go in and look at what they're working on so far. One of the big takeaways that I had from it is that, at least from only looking at the smart contract side, it's going to be fairly manual in terms of when a rental period is over. It looks like either the renter, the lender, or the lendee, one of those two people will have to call another smart contract function to end the rental. So if you're renting out an Aavegotchi and neither you or the person borrowing closes that rental, they can just keep using your Aavegotchi, which could be bad or could be good. If they're going out there and they're farming 24/7 and getting you really good yield. So one of you will have to go in and claim that. The other thing that was interesting is that you will be able to, it's kind of open-ended in terms of the ERC20 tokens that you'll be able to lend and split up. So for instance, if somebody comes up with a game in the future and they have their own token, that they could issue game rewards to your Aavegotchi's wallet, and that ERC20 token could be part of the rental agreement, and that would get split up at the end. So it looks like the way the Alchemica works is, if I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, if the Aavegotchi who goes and gets the Alchemica, if that Aavegotchi is being lended, then the Alchemica goes to the Gotchi's pocket. And I want to say that if it's not, that if it's you with your Aavegotchi, then it just goes straight to your pocket, or straight to your wallet. So that's kind of cool that, like, it's not gonna be like Rarity Farming where you'll have to sorry, I'm making tea. It's not like Rarity Farming where when you're farming for yourself, you'll have to go in and collect the Alchemica every time. So yeah, there's some cool, anybody who's into like Solidity coding, definitely recommend going in and looking at what they're doing. They also have which I think they kind of teased, there's like a whitelist feature. So I think this is primarily for guilds, right? You'll be able to list your Aavegotchi for rent, and you'll be able to whitelist certain people. So if you have, presumably, if you have an address, like a list of all the addresses of people in your guild, you can whitelist it so that you only want to rent to those people. And then I guess the other thing that was sort of more manual than I anticipated is that when your rental agreement comes to an end, it looks like you're going to, kind of similar to if you were to list items on the bazaar, you'll have to go in and re-list that again. So the sort of, I guess, like workflow of how this would work is maybe a little, you'll probably be doing like 2 or 3 smart contract calls every period, right? So if you're lending it out for 12 hours or 24 hours, you've got this sort of initial rental smart contract call where you're putting it out there, then somebody's accepting the rental, and then at the end of that rental period you're claiming your Aavegotchi back, and then you're relisting the Aavegotchi. I guess, like I said, kind of similar to what we do with listing things on the bazaar or in terms of petting our Aavegotchis.
That's interesting. So it sounds like, like you said, it's going to be a very manual process, but that could be good or bad for whoever's renting it, especially if it's associated with a guild, possibly. I know, Dr. Wagme, you mentioned, some of the benefits to being able to have your gotchis managed by a guild, especially if there's this role for like a guild manager. And I could see now, now that you mentioned this, Spirited, I could see a role for like a guild manager to just manage just these rentals, right? Because they're going to be expiring, and you got to re-roll it into another, another rental or something like that.
Yeah, I will. I will kind of tease that I'm working on a project right now that will automate a lot of that, kind of in the spirit of how we have these petting services like Gotchi.world. I'm working on a service that will hopefully do a lot of that same stuff. So stay tuned for more details about that. Hopefully in the next week or two.
Oh, that's really cool. Bearded tools.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm expanding my empire.
Because recently, I guess you did a fork of Ghost GG's contract for raffles. Is that right? Or
Yeah, so I had I had like a few projects that I've kind of been wanting to do in sort of the Gotchi verse, and I do not know really anything about making the front end of websites. I've done a lot of smart contracting work this year, but I haven't really done any front end stuff. And maybe like a month or two ago, GhostGG, they open sourced all of their code for their website, which is awesome. So, so that makes it a lot easier. You still have to kind of know what you're doing, but that to me helped a lot to have these sort of building blocks in place of like, like here's the code that I can, just give it a token ID and it'll print up this, the really cool image of the Aavegotchi with its stats. And, for anyone who's been on the website, there's like animations that you hover over it and it's, it sort of explodes off the wearables so you can see what it looks like underneath. So since they open source that, all of that is sort of just there to take and do what you want with it. So I took that and made like a raffle DApp that you can deposit. You can deposit wearable items to the smart contract, and those act as raffle tickets. And then the winner of the raffle gets all the wearable items of that rarity. Just kind of a fun way to allow the degens to do some gambling. But yeah,
oh, that's cool.
yeah.
I would suggest that you add, because I've been one of those degens who has gambled. I'll admit this here. I participated in one and I cheated. I put in wearables for multiple wallets and I lost all of them. And I told myself, like, if I win, I'm going to admit to this and just give all the wearables away. But I lost, so that was it.
I will say, I mean, that's not, I don't really consider that cheating. The sort of the goal behind that was never to limit the number of people who were involved. It was just, for me, it was much easier coding it that way to just say you can only do one per wallet. Nobody, I mean, as you found out, you don't really gain an advantage by entering from multiple wallets, right? Because your odds of winning go up, also your cost of entry goes up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But no, so sorry, you were saying, what were you saying that we should do?
You should add a fee, like even if it's a small, like per entry fee for yourself, like a half a ghost or something. I know some of these sites are doing tips, and tips are good, but there should be a degen tax. If you're willing to throw, bet like me, I ended up spending like 80 ghosts, which is at the time over $200. Like I'll throw in one ghost as a fee, no problem.
Yeah, so we had talked about, because I did want to add that in. I'm not expecting it to be like a lot of money, but it's nice to get a couple ghosts. And I think what we had agreed on, and which is actually implemented now, is that it doesn't cost anything to deposit the wearables, but if you win, you have to pay a 10 ghost fee to collect the wearables. So basically essentially the winner is paying the fee for everybody else, which I think is kind of cool, because at that point you've probably won like 10 common wearables, which hundreds of dollars of winnings. You can put up 10 ghost to keep the project running, pay the domain fees.
That's really cool, man. I'm I'm really looking forward to some of these open source projects because it really I think it's going to really speed up the development of things in like within the Gotchiverse, especially once we get like these programmable dApps and then there's the SDK. Like I hope we just keep things open source in general for, even people that are learning to kind of read this stuff and then come up with their own experimental stuff. I think that's kind of what separates like decentralized applications like Web3 in general from the whole like traditional Web2 space is like because we can share things with each other, we can take our base knowledge and then not only learn from those projects, but then like implement these cool things that you're doing. And I mean, I personally hope I can make some of my own Aavegotchi mini games and stuff. That's kind of like my personal goal. But like, seeing a lot of other games and then you reading their code, you can get some ideas of your own development when you're kind of trying to create these things. So I think that's really cool. And that, the wearable raffle is like a really good example of that.
And that's about to all explode when the SDKs and the NPCs go live. People are going to have all sorts of fun things. I can't wait.
Yeah, I mean, even just being able to have in world advertising, right? Just like just like a billboard on the side of the road that says, go to bearded.tools, and somebody comes over and there's a link and they click on it, and then next thing they know they're in this raffle, literally losing the clothes off their back. It's awesome. Yeah, that's great.
I was initially kind of concerned about how big the Gotchiverse was. Like, someone did the calculations on like how many Spacious was in the test versus that compared to the Citadel. And anyways, it's huge, but being so big, I think we can like spell out words with walls and like cool things to advertise from space. So I'm really excited to see what that looks like. And I think it'll be much cooler looking than like the sandbox like looks so lame right now. And I think the Gotchiverse is going to look way cooler than that.
I'm also hoping that they are able to implement, I'm sure this will not be there for like the first version, but you know how in a lot of like the promo videos that have come out, like whenever they tease a new guild entry, they have this sort of like 3D zoom out view where you can see the whole landscape. I hope that they get something like that in place where you can kind of zoom out and see the whole space. That would be pretty cool. I am worried though about how big it is. But I mean, if the game takes off and if we've got like 50,000, 100,000 people playing, it's going to fill up in no time.
Yeah,
one last thing about... Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say these NPCs and the SDKs, like that opportunity for interoperability is going to be really cool to, these other NFT projects can have their NPC there, and we're going to like really start to see meaningful interoperability between these metaverses. And I think whoever can do that smoothly and successfully and naturally is going to be really successful. And it's fun to be what feels like the front runner for that.
Yeah, like how cool would it be to have portals between like World Wide Web and the Gotchiverse? Just sort of this like, you're already, you're doing it with the same avatar and the same wallet. So I don't see what would be stopping you from basically having an NPC that is just essentially a link, but is coded to look like a portal that you go from one game into the other.
Yeah,
and
that'd be pretty cool.
The quests are going to be so much fun, like going to this NPC and like going into another world and like that it's strange, and it's going to be a blast. I can't wait. And people are so inventive, they're going to make cool things.
Yeah, for sure.
How do you all feel about this Gotchi World announcement? I feel like it's kind of gone under the radar a little bit, but the idea that we'll be able to play Gotchi World and there'll be leaderboards. I'm trying to find the tweet real quick so I can...
Gotchi Hero, right?
Was it Gotchi Hero? I thought it was Gotchi World. Let me see.
It's that game that it's like supposed to be they call it an Aavegotchi Maxi game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what that's going to look like because that seems like it's going to be its own kind of standalone, almost like a role-playing game where your Aavegotchis are going to be this character, and then you're going to earn their in-game tokens. So going back to what you said, Bearded, even with the lending and renting, it's like there's going to be a whole nother market, not just for the ghost token as like a fee or Alchemica as a resource, but there'll be other maybe incentives that you can attach through the smart contract. So I think that's really cool as well. That's another additional feature that I think gets overlooked.
Yeah, and I think that's where we will start seeing, because all of the Aavegotchi assets are all on chain. I think we will start seeing, once we have a big user base, we will start seeing other projects trying to basically bootstrap their own popularity by saying, oh, we had this game built and we were going to use these other avatars, but like, why don't we just use the Aavegotchis instead? Because then we'll get, X tens of thousands of potential users.
I mean, think about all the dev time these guys are saving. These guys are creating Gotchi heroes. They're not creating any of the in-game avatars. All the the play mechanics are like the raw data for the play mechanics is like all there. Like in terms of like all the Aavegotchi stats. You have like hundreds of like in-game assets that you have access to, and they all have their own, I guess, individual programmability. And then you have, just everything's open source, so they can take pieces of the Aavegotchi smart contracts and kind of integrate them with their own and whatnot. So a lot of the dev work has been kind of done, and I think that's going to allow for some really awesome games to be developed because people can just focus on developing the core gameplay.
Yeah, and there's supposed to be prizes in Ghosts, not only just the in-game currency for the Gotchi Heroes thing, but in Ghosts. So it's like, I'm kind of looking forward to that because it's like, the more that I can play with my Aavegotchi, the better. And, we're going to be there in the Gotchiverse. I'm actually wondering, the team says they're going to kind of be back to work tomorrow, right? Or tonight, I guess, for them. Or, yeah, tonight for us now, but tomorrow for them, Monday. So I wonder when we're going to get another stress test. Like if they're going to unleash the gates a little bit and let us run around, they can test some new features, maybe try to do the Alchemica drops. Because I know Jesse did that when he was being interviewed. I forget by who, but he did a couple of giveaways almost, like contests where they activated the Alchemica, and if you collected enough and then posted your screenshot of how much you collected, you can win like 100 ghosts or something like that. I'm wondering when the next stress test though.
It'd be cool to do a stress test of the actual map too.
They did say they would do a few of these stress tests before the actual launch of the Gotchiverse. Now I'm thinking, initially the roadmap stated that the Gotchiverse would be live in December, but now we're going to see that probably push forward a bit. But in lieu of that, I'm hoping we get like 3 to 4, maybe more of these like stress tests. And like you're saying, Dr. Wagme, hopefully these stress tests are like in the actual in-game map to get like a better sense of scale.
Well, just think about how crazy that's going to be, though, because during the stress test, at the height of the stress test, we approached 700 users in the game, and that map was pretty large. But if we're doing an actual representation of the open and available Citadel, even half of the Citadel, 700 people are going to be so far. We'll be able to move so far apart based on the sizes of a spacious. It's going to be kind of intense.
Do you guys think there's going to be a market for having lots of parcels certain distances from each other so you can run in between them and deposit your Alchemica while you're Pac-Manning it? Because I didn't think it'd be a problem, but you could end up being 30 minutes away from your parcel if you keep walking in one direction.
This might be a question for Bearded because you just gave me a great idea, Dr. Wagme, but we're going to have an SDK developer kit, right? If our Dex, like everything else Aavegotchi, is open source, could we not theoretically fork the Dex and then put our own version of the Dex on, or a copy of the Dex on our parcels as a DApp? Because then if you have, say, 20 or 30 parcels all over the map, you could fork that Dex put one on your own parcel so that people could stop there and pay maybe an additional fee to use and drop off their Alchemica instead of having to sludge across the whole world.
I think like the Alchemica is gonna be like Friends in a way until you like withdraw it, and like I bet they only will let you withdraw it from like certain installations, but I could be totally wrong with him.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. That you're not actually going to be doing like a right, that there's not going to be a smart contract call until you get to your exit point or whatever, the harvest, wherever you're depositing it. So until you get to that point, the fact that you have collected that Alchemica probably only lives in their centralized servers, right? But yeah, I don't know. And I know I did see in the GitHub that it looks like they're planning to do more of the, they have this back end. This was like what they've been doing a lot of the what a lot of the anti-bot functions have been in our recent successful anti-bot like auctions and raffles has been basically there's a wallet sitting in their server that they call the back-end signer, that when you do something through the user interface, that wallet is signing it's signing your contract call basically, and then when you submit that to the smart contract, it has to have that valid signature. So basically it forces, unless you know the private key for that wallet, it forces you to to go through the user interface. So I think they're going to be doing that a lot more once the Gotchiverse goes live to further prevent people from botting the game.
My guess is initially there's almost going to be like, considering the size of the Gotchiverse, right? Like, I mean, not even the Gotchiverse, but the Citadel itself. And we have, how many Aavegotchis do we have now? 25,000, I think. And roughly 70% of those have been summoned. I think the Gotchiverse is going to seem pretty empty at first, but there'll be like this mad gold rush for Alchemica, because these harvesters apparently are not supposed to be very accurate. They're supposed to have a lot of spillover, and I think in general there's going to be a lot of spillover initially till people can contain their Alchemica. So the first little bit, I think, is just going to be this mad rush for especially like the rare types of Alchemica as well. Just to collect as much as you can. But on the flip side of that, I think we're also going to realize how empty the Citadel feels with, maybe 20-30% of those 17,000 or 18,000 gotchis active at any one time. And that might give us a better gauge of also going forward for Haunt 3, because we were talking about Haunt 3 earlier. That might give us a better gauge of how many more Aavegotchis we want for Haunt 3 to be in the Gotchiverse at that point.
Yeah, or two. I know that Dan, I think Dan commented recently in the Discord about potentially having like a mini Aavegotchi that people could buy for cheap. Basically like something in between a liquidator and an Aavegotchi. We may decide that we need something like that to help fill the space where, since liquidators can't come into the Citadel, and the Citadel in and of itself is going to be so big. It kind of I forget which game, but there was one of these metaverse games. I remember reading a review of it when it first came out, and the person reviewing it said it just felt like a ghost town, because they went in and they were exploring it, and they were like, yeah, like the world was really cool, but I didn't see anybody for like an hour while I was walking around.
Happy, that ties back to our conversation earlier about how I said like Nashville, I can walk for like a mile or two and not see a person.
Yeah, totally. I mean, maybe it could be some kind of like, you were talking about this like kind of mini gotchi. It could be some kind of a disposable gotchi, right? So you get to, you get these people that want to try the space out. I want to know what the Gotchiverse feels like, and they can walk around, look at people's parcels, and maybe they can farm a little bit of Alchemica, a certain percentage, and it's almost like a zombie Aavegotchi, you know. So like if you don't interact with it every day, maybe it just like degrades, and then if you don't like interact with it for a week, it just like disintegrates, you know. Like something like that would be really interesting because it incentivizes you to keep playing with it every day. Let's say you have, you know, 10 to 15 days that you play with it and you harvest all this alchemica versus, you know, you don't interact with it that much and it just kind of disintegrates. I think that'd be interesting.
Yeah, it would be. I remember him saying that it wouldn't like the little gotchis. This was in a hangout though, so it was a while ago. I'm a little fuzzy on it, but the little gotchis definitely would be temporary, but not on the level of like a liquidator. So that would be interesting. I feel with rentals, once like when the game launches, I think it's going to, like Dr. Wagme said this earlier, like kind of talking about the LPs, how it's going to be kind of interesting once, you know, because these new currencies basically coming into play in game. Uh, at first, I feel like it will be a little bit of a ghost town, but we're going to be able to reap the benefits if you put the time in of walking around and collecting all the free money. And then as people pick up on, you know, the returns that we're going to have, I believe it'll be easier to rent out our gotchis to other people. Because in reality, there's 17 or 18,000 some gotchis right now, but I think there's only 4,000 wallets holding that many. So unless guilds are very organized at the beginning, that they're ready to jump in and have their rentals or the loaning ready, it might be a little bit of a delay until we get the lending up and then the word out on like the returns and perspective of what we're making and playing.
Yeah, I've said this before. I'm just waiting for like the first like TikTok video of, you know, someone being like, here's how I made, you know, $1,000 in 12 hours playing this, you know, playing this game with no money down, or, you know, $2 down or whatever. I think that's gonna, if we get one, you know, sort of influencer type person putting out something like that, it's just gonna blow the whole thing open.
We were asking earlier, what do you think is the length of the upcoming white paper? I said 15 to 30. Everybody else consensus was like 20, 25. Bearded, how long do you think the white paper is going to be when they release it for the Gotchiverse?
I think it'll be more on like the 15 page, like kind of the lower end of things. I mean, they've said like a lot of what made up the light paper was a lot of the like the lore, right? And a lot of the like flavor and stuff. And I remember them saying that it was not going to be that, it was not going to have all that, that it was going to be more game mechanics oriented. Now, I mean, I guess where it could get rather lengthy is if they want to do it like a full white paper of, you know, the whole Gotchiverse, you know, the arena and, you know, these lands outside the Citadel and whatnot, versus just, you know, what they sort of foresee as stage one. But I could see us getting like a light paper part one or a white paper part one and then like a white paper part two in the future.
I think what I'm realizing just having this conversation is, above all things, I have to exercise my patience, which is like not the easiest thing to do in this space. But like I think back to other MMORPGs that I've played in the past. RuneScape was the main one, and that game, even to get off on its initial legs, took like years for the devs to. It was a small dev team, and it took them years to build out a lot of the quests and like finer details of the game. Even though like some of those things were anticipated for like really long time. So I think maybe I just have to, because I get it. It is really exciting to like knowing what we know, kind of wanting to have that right away. And I think you make a good point that I think the initial gameplay per se is going to be focused around trying to collect as much of this alchemica that's just kind of like free money sitting around. And then the other aspect of it is the governance model will probably get more sophisticated. You know, we're going to have like community district DAO governance, and then we'll also have like overall governance of the game, and then we'll have the DAO square, and then we'll also have the Pixelcraft square. So I think between all those things, there'll be a lot of events to keep us occupied. And once the Gotchiverse launches, we might not be thinking as much about a lot of this stuff as we are now, just because we don't really have anything to hang on to per se right now.
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing that's so cool about being part of this project is that we're like seeing how the sausage gets made, right? Like usually usually you go out in the sort of like Web 2 world, it's like, oh, this game's done, and like I go out and I buy it, and it's this, sure there will be bugs or whatever, but it's like a mostly fleshed out product. And what's so cool about this is that we're seeing, like this is probably not going to be a fully fleshed out product on day one, and the team is going to be asking us for feedback. And if you've been around Pixelcraft for more than a couple days, that they take very, very seriously the community feedback, and they really want this to be something that they can fully turn over in the future. So that's what I think is so cool, is just being able to get on a call with Coder Dan and Jesse every week and like let them know where we're coming from and what we'd like to see happen, and to really like I feel like we've had a part in actually like getting this thing forward and like having an opinion on the direction that it takes.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's not, I mean, it's even unlike some other games in Web3. You have Axie Infinity, for example, and the way they've been developing their kind of metaverse is a lot different than the way Aavegotchi's approaching it, in that we've left a decent amount of creative control up to the players. And because I think part of the secret sauce to this, making of the sausage is the type of people Aavegotchi initially attracted were not just people that were attracted to PFPs. They might have been people that were a little bit more kind of, this is just something I've noticed amongst a lot of people that I met in Aavegotchi, but a lot more like analytical, a lot more thoughtful, and a decent amount of us have some investing experience. And I'm not trying to sound like all like high and mighty, or we're better than, it's not like that, but it's more like just the type of people that it initially attracted really cared about the game, because you had to care about the game. You had to care about like the individual stats of the Aavegotchi, and like rarity farming seemed like pretty intricate for me when I was first learning it. So anybody who didn't want to put the time in initially for that was kind of maybe deterred. So I think we have a bunch of people right now that really do care about this game. And aside from the devs who just keep shipping, I think there's other people who are going to be known as like shippers eventually as well in their own right, building dApps and whatnot. But I was going to say, with rarity farming, we've been talking about rarity farming a lot this this space, and there was some talk about ARS initially. I know, Bearded, you had a thread on ARS. Um,
Yeah.
it's really interesting. I was actually reading it before this because I thought we'd be talking about some ARS stuff too. Do you think ARS is going to significantly change the way people approach rarity farming, like the way they're approaching it now, with just buying the highest BRS wearables, highest BRS Gotchi? Do you think that recipe is going to change?
Also, Bearded, very quickly, if
Yeah.
you could, because I personally do not know what ARS is. I know it's absolute rarity score, but I have
Yeah.
no idea impact or anything. So just for people who might not know, like me.
Yeah. So I've had like kind of an interesting sort of personal like roller coaster on how I view ARS. So real quick, for anybody who doesn't fully understand what ARS is, let me just pull up real quick so that I can throw out the actual language. ARS is, so basically ARS, and I'm just going to quote from the wiki here, absolute rarity score is derived from the particular rarity of the Aavegotchi's traits in the overall Aavegotchi ecosystem. For example, if a lot of players have trained their Aavegotchis to have highest energy level, then the ARS for high energy level would be lower than that of lowest energy level. So basically, it's sort of a relative rarity, right? And this is kind of in theory interesting because obviously the traits are all on a bell curve, but then we can pick certain Aavegotchis out of the portal, right? So the idea was that, well, if everybody's going after the most rare traits, then those traits might actually become less rare because, who's going to go out and, select a 50 trait for, for aggression or a 60 trait for aggression. And the idea was that, that would lead to was that in the future you could award points based on that. So that if you had a trait that was not, that maybe in and of itself wasn't, significantly rare from a BRS perspective, but was rare within the Aavegotchi ecosystem, then that would award you more points. And so this was kind of put out onto the wiki from day one, and people had always sort of seen this as, oh, this is going to be a thing in the future. So I, a few months ago, took it upon myself to start this thread of sort of discussing this, and I started running the numbers for what we actually see in the real world, and there's really not much of a difference between the ARS and the BRS, and I think that kind of boils down to the fact that while people are while they will tend to select mythical traits instead of, common traits, even if you select an Aavegotchi with, mythical eyes, that Aavegotchi might still have a lot of other common traits. And so we really don't see currently a big impact of if you were to give out scores. So, for anybody who wants to look, I had posted some graphs on the Discourse website, and you can see ARS basically tracks the bell curve. So I think, maybe in the long run, when we have a lot of XP and people are leveling up a lot, you could see some kind of impact. But to me, it did not seem like it was going to significantly impact how the leaderboard stood, how people played the game. And so I've sort of fallen out of favor in terms of us wanting to, because at first I was saying, we should have this before Rarity Farming Season 3. But now I'm sort of thinking that with the sort of attention that it would require from the devs, who I'm sure are already stretched pretty thin at this point, that having this sort of, putting developer attention on something that is not going to impact the game very much and will only really impact it for people who are already playing, and which may even make it just more complicated for new people coming on board, right? This whole other thing of whoa, I just got my head around rarity farming, and now you're telling me about this other thing. So I don't think that now is the right time to implement it, was sort of the takeaway that I came away with, having kind of dug into it. But of course, that's just my opinion, and other people might have different opinions.
Yeah, of course. I mean, initially my thoughts were kind of similar like yours. I thought there would be some significant shifts with Aavegotchis that might have more common traits in general. But after looking at some of the data that you had published, some of the charts and looking at some of the comparisons between, it seems like we're still a little bit too. It seems like it's a size of a sample size issue. When we have a larger sample size of Aavegotchis, and we'll get a better idea of where everything's distributed, and then maybe at that point, some Aavegotchis might actually have a decent advantage over some other ones. But if it is tracking the bell curve, then it's almost better to keep it simple. Keep things simple for now. And I'm kind of just like you. I'm kind of shifting over to let's just get Season 3 kind of planned out. Let's just fix if there's any kinks with Kinship or XP. We can address those, and then let's get Season 3 going. That'd be pretty awesome.
While we're talking about season 3, what do you guys think? Because I was talking with some people on Discord earlier today about this. What do you guys think we should do about the rookie leaderboards going into season 3? Because we're gonna have a much smaller, not much smaller, but the rewards pool is down. Assuming that the DAO doesn't contribute to it, the rewards pool will be down from like 2 million ghost that we had in season 2 to like 1.5 million ghost for season 3. I think the way that Cookie Thief had originally written the signal proposal was to completely get rid of the rookie leaderboards, which might be kind of a controversial take.
Personally, I said this earlier. I sold gotchis. I sold 5 gotchis. I ended up buying others to replace them, but not fully. But the ones I sold were high XP gotchis that I got from my ambassador, like building it up through the ambassador, figuring that we were going to lose the rookie leaderboard. So would it be worthwhile to hold these gotchis? I might as well get some value out of that XP now and then flip it into higher BRS gotchis, which is what I did. So personally, and very biased for my bag, I'm kind of voting against. I hope they don't do a rookie leaderboard because if they do, then I made the wrong choice, which I'm fine with because I think I'll do fine on either leaderboard. But I was assuming that they were going to do away with it because my question then is like, if we keep a rookie leaderboard, is it really a sophomore leaderboard? Do we need to then have a rookie leaderboard for Haunt 3? What happens when we get to Haunt 15? Are we going to have 15 leaderboards because everybody needs to sit in a lane that we can all be competitive in? I don't know what the answer is, but I know that's not the answer.
Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Wagme. Go ahead.
Yeah, all I was going to say is I would really hope we can reward perspective engagement as we're going to have new people coming in. It's like if we are going to be able to use our like big coffers of Ghost from selling parcels, then great. But if we're not going to be able to do that, having the first Rarity Farming, the first reward season that a lot of new users are seeing and that have no access to, I think will leave people feeling like this isn't a game for everybody. So having something for people that are new to the space, I think would be pretty meaningful and worth the investment. And I'm talking like 10% of the total.
Now, of course, like if you're coming in now, right? Let's say you missed season 2 and you're coming in now, you've bought it anytime since season 2. You're probably not going to have access, even if we kept the rookie leaderboards, you're not going to have access to the rookie Kinship or XP, to significant standing on the Kinship or XP leaderboard without putting up some serious ghost, right? Just because of the way, like how competitive those are.
Right, which is why like a Delta XP option, I think, would reward perspective engagement for everybody.
Yeah, I like the concept of having Delta XP from one season to the next. It could be cool.
Especially as arcade is going to debut and like mini games. I think that was kind of a bust for this last Rarity Farming season. There was like one event, but I hope to see more of that and like a real play to earn experience and using all these cool things that have been developed.
Yeah, and I will preface this by saying that I have the number 17 regular Kinship Gotchi and the number 9 rookie Kinship Gotchi, but I think we should get rid of Kinship rewards because the way that they are at this point, that everybody is just everybody's just either personally botting it or using a petting service. I'm just not sure it really makes sense anymore to be rewarding people for knowing on day 1 of the haunt to immediately summon their gotchi and either start their bot or or set up an account with one of these petting services, or to put out a lot of money for the kinship potions, which it's unclear if we'll ever even have more of those. So, I mean, if Kinship has really has a role, and I know they've, it sounds like the team has sort of been changing around the role that Kinship will have with Alchemica channeling, but if there is a role for Kinship in game, I'm just not sure that we need to also be incentivizing it through Rarity Farming. I don't know.
I'm all for starting to incentivize the games a lot more and being able to leverage that gameplay, because I feel like the games really do get people engaged. And as we've seen through these, like Seiza has been holding these guild wars. And if we had some sort of a guild war dynamic going on in the arcade with like some significant prizes during rarity farming in terms of like XP and maybe even kinship potions, right? That could be another way of incentivizing people um, to work together to play some of these games. Uh, but yeah, I think somebody had also mentioned with kinship this dependability score. So what do you guys think of like having a time period, like a snapshot period where that's the only part that contributes towards like your dependability score. So each pet that you miss within that time period would work against you, but not necessarily overall if you just started the game.
See, I was thinking about that. I think because of the accessibility to auto petters, it's like what Bearded said. You would just have to rush to get to that snapshot, summon out all of your gotchis and throw them in an auto petter, and your dependability score will be perfect. Well, as well as the other 2,000 people that figured that strategy out. So I think it wouldn't be at first, before the mass adoption of auto petters in the game, I was more for the dependability score. But now I can see how it's also flawed based on the auto petting, the prevalence of auto petting.
Yeah, I'll just agree that the auto petting is it's a fairly low like achievable thing now, just to have your Aavegotchi pet consistently, so there has to be some more of a game element there.
And kinship might change, right? With the game coming out, like maybe you have to log in twice a day or like interact with your altar or, whatever. And that seems more meaningful and like tougher to bot.
Yeah,
And
I don't think you'll see people.
I was gonna say,
Yeah, I was gonna say,
for like guilds that are like I'm lending out to, like if they don't use my gotchi twice a day, then I'm gonna end up falling down the kinship leaderboard. So it creates like an interesting synergy that you have to maximize how well you're lending out your gotchis to.
Yeah, we're gonna have to figure out. Somebody's gonna have to make a DApp or some kind of AavegotchiStats.com version of like a Yelp for the workers, like who we're lending to, like a way to like give them scores so we can say, hey, this worker's really effective versus this one who's like, almost like your Uber rating, like as a driver or as a passenger.
Dude, that it exists, man. Like, I don't know if you've dug too much into these gamer guilds, but they're pretty intense with the data they collect on their players and like how productive they are and who they give scholarships to. And like CGU, like every day they have an announcement where they have like, we have 20 scholarships today, and they have like instantly 100 applications. And it's crazy. It's like sitting outside Home Depot and picking up like labor work for cheap. Like there's just like all these people, and then they keep data on how productive they are. So that's my plan, is to outsource it to these guilds who are doing that.
Oh, that hadn't even really clicked with me that you might want to whitelist people who are more productive, right? Like I don't want to rent to somebody who's, they're going to rent it for a 12-hour period, but play for 30 minutes and then not do anything. I want to rent to somebody who's going to be grinding out, 12 hours of productive farming.
Right, and it creates this like cool design where I need the most productive people on my most productive gotchis with the perfect amount of land to hopefully make the leaderboards that like we hope exist when the realm is out. And that's going to be pretty complex to do. And I don't know how people are going to do it without a guild.
Yeah.
Yeah, you also have to assume at the very beginning of the lending, we'll have to figure out what the metrics, like what the values of these metrics will be. Like what is a good worker, like in this game. At first, we're not going to know like how efficient people are until we can kind of gauge it against other information based on time. So those first couple weeks, based on the lending, It'll be interesting to be able to kind of calibrate and see like, oh, this is what a good worker, these are the returns from a good worker versus like poor work, seeing that a person is only, farming for 30 minutes out of the 12 hours like Beardy said.
And I think one of the big differentiators is going to be communal channeling and the bonus that comes from bigger groups doing communal channeling. That's another part of my bet on guilds being pretty important, because I won't be able to log in with 100 of my gotchis that have the same like wearable to do that. But I think these guilds are going to be able to do that.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that scales up with the kinship. Because they've also mentioned that like kinship's going to play a significant part now in this multiplier, some sort of a multiplier you'll get from channeling. I'm curious if if that multiplier is also gonna apply to communal channeling. You have your like your individual channeling, but then your communal channeling. I wonder if kinship's gonna apply to both, because that'd be that extra bonus on top. And it might actually add significant value to the Gotchi to have a high kinship Aavegotchi at that point.
Well, I will say in the last few days, I want to say last 3 or 4 days, I've noticed if you're in the Aavegotchi Discord, in the Bazaar channel, there are buyers that have been, I don't know if it's the same buyer, but a couple of buyers I've seen that are specifically like searching for deals to get high kinship H1 gotchis. Like that's what they're looking for. So, there's definitely value in that kinship, that high kinship, especially if you can get a whole bunch of people together to channel together.
What do you guys consider a high kinship Aavegotchi at this point, when you're looking at the bazaar in general?
I think over 500 is kind of my thought.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. Like I have my main gotchis at like I think 510, 520, and like people are offering good money, and it's like based on this BRS, it would be I could probably get a really good deal based on both the kinship and the XP. But then I think about it, it's like we were talking about it earlier. It's a flip that wouldn't make sense because the value of that kinship, it's going to take so long before I can get my other gotchis even close to that, and then 500 kinship is not going to be the same, months and months from now when they're like 1,000 kinship gotchis. So it's like this like juggling act of like, is it worth it to sell this and try to flip into like more higher BRS gotchis, or do I hold on to this kinship? This is where the white paper will come in and like really set everything straight, or white paper part 1.
My personal thought is that kinship is going to rule in the near term, and until we have PvP and the grid come out and we're just killing liquidator after liquidator and competing in the arena, some of the traits might feel a little pointless. So I think high BRS gotchis are going to suffer in the short term, and kinship is going to do well.
If kinship scales kind of how I think it's gonna scale, like with the multiplier, I could see these, like you said, no future. These really high kinship Aavegotchis are going to be really hard to get rid of because it's just going to provide just a much better yield amongst your other Aavegotchis. That might be the one you choose to farm with, especially if you don't have that many high kinship Aavegotchis. Like for me personally, I have 2, but they haven't got to 500 yet. They're close. But even where they're at now, I'd consider them pretty high because like I've looked on the bazaar and I can't really find too many that are like above 450. And it seems to be starting to get priced in where people are saying, if it's like above I think around 400, 450, does seem to be a premium that's starting to be priced in. But that'll become probably even more apparent, right? Once the realm comes out and there's actually like an Alchemica bonus associated with that.
I wish our bazaar had a sorting feature for the Aavegotchis based on BRS, not naked gotchi BRS. Because it's cool to see that you can buy a gotchi that's a 583, right, naked. But I want you don't really see. I want to be able to judge it based on with wearables, or at least I want buyers to judge it based on that, so it's easier to sell my bag. Because then your 600 gotchi your 607 BRS Gotchi looks a whole lot nicer when it's not like front run by the information that's really only a 540.
I think these Gotchi builds are going to become more and more apparent as we get more details on the actual stats and what they do. There'll be specific builds of Gotchi for different things. There'll be like a farmer build that's like, this is the ideal kind of stats for a farmer. There'll be like a battler, and there might be like a mage, and there might be other like subsets within that. Um, I think that's when we'll get more that's when we'll get a better idea of what each of these are kind of worth, like what their utility is.
Yeah, that'll be really cool when you can like, hopefully sort in the bazaar by like, I want to see the highest, BRS farmer or the highest BRS warrior or whatever. I remember, you mentioned RuneScape earlier. I remember back in the day, like starting over and like making new RuneScape avatars, trying to level them up with the exact right characteristics, so that you could battle somebody else who was like a level 20, but but you had emphasized all the battle characteristics. I think that'll come in play huge once we get the arena live.
I think that in that sense, that's how that's kind of the first thing I noticed about Aavegotchi is they're actually very similar to like that initial RuneScape character, because you had like, let's say, I don't remember exactly how many stats, but there was like a significant amount in RuneScape. You'd have like whatever 20 stats or 30 different stats, but like you might only focus on raising like 2 or 3 of those stats to create this like really OP player. And even though you didn't have like a high level character in the game, you'd be able to attack certain other types of character that were a lot higher. But because the way you'd built your character out with, let's say, higher physical damage and maybe like high defense or something, and had like this really cool warrior, you'd have this like little advantage. So I think we're going to start seeing these little advantages come out. And like me personally, that's kind of why I bought, like, when I was looking for Aavegotchis, I actually bought a whole bunch of different ones that kind of hit different extremes. Like I have one that's all low traits. Like all the traits are below 40, let's say. And then I have one that's like all the traits are like really high, but the aggression's really low. So I just have like these different really kind of extreme combinations, because I think maybe 1 or 2 of those will end up becoming really like OP. And compared to when you're looking for an Aavegotchi, some people look for more balanced traits. But it's really hard to know. It's really hard to say at this point. Especially, we're kind of run out. Like I feel like I've kind of run out of information to kind of gleam over and disseminate and break apart and digest at this point, and I just want more now. I want more stuff that we can break down and look over.
I really feel like where we're at right now feels like the calm before a big storm. Just in terms of the activity that we're seeing, like in the bazaar. Like I don't know if anybody else remembers, but there was this period before the last wave of like new people coming on that everything like just died down for maybe like a month or 2, and it was like really, really quiet. Bazaar volume was really low, and then you just started having these like just like a couple people start popping in, being like, "Hey, like I'm new, like I want to learn more about this," and then it was just this like tidal wave of new people coming in right before, like right around Haunt 2, right before Haunt 2, that I feel like we're at that point again, that we're right before the realm's going to go live. Things have like died, slowed down a little bit after the excitement of, all the GBM options, and I think probably in the next week or 2 we're going to get white paper, more stress tests, maybe we'll have another auction, maybe we'll get, we'll announce another season of Rarity Farming, and I feel like we're at the calm before the storm right now. So
I agree.
Keep accumulating if you're if you're not done accumulating yet.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Like, I think we are going through a very serendipitous moment because, like, at least in my interactions in the real world, when I talk about NFTs, most people don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But nowadays, when I'm having conversations about metaverses, everybody has heard or knows and now understand sort of what the metaverse is, even if they only know it in passing or if they don't take it seriously. So I think us having this product come out, a legit metaverse with like all these different implications, the SDK stuff, the just the yield farming, everything. I believe we really are about to, like I was saying earlier, I think we're at the bottom of the hockey stick, like that big upturn. We're at the foot of the mountain where we're about to start like pretty much going nuts.
It's also just like it's gonna be so much easier to onboard people. I feel like it's really hard. It's been really hard to onboard people because they'll be like, oh, tell me about this thing, and you're like, okay, well here's the bearded lady, and they're like, oh, okay, cool. Like what would that particular Aavegotchi run me? And I'm like, I don't know, like $100,000. And they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? But once you have the game live, you can say, oh, like go play it. Like just go, here's a couple Matic, here's a couple Ghost, like, go rent an Aavegotchi for 12 hours and go run around in the metaverse. That's going to be like a much easier sell to just get people in and get people playing around with it,
My mom asked me what Decentraland was the other day, because they want to, I guess my parents are, they're looking at cryptocurrency now, and like metaverses, like the Sandbox and Decentraland are actually making it on like CNBC and stuff. So like, and that's kind of when like the boomer generation, they start, like that's their that specific generation, like my parents, that's where they get all their news is from the TV. So once like Aavegotchi makes it to that level of mainstream where like CNBC or like the local newspaper or like someone's talking about it, that's like when it's gonna just like explode, I think. But right now, like you said, it's a calm before the storm. And I feel like, it might just take a few influencers, even like Beanie Maxi or like, Elio Trades or something to reveal that they've invested in Aavegotchi to really get the spotlight. I mean, the Coin Bureau actually covered Aavegotchi a couple weeks ago. So like the word's getting out there, and I think people are getting over that hurdle of coming over to layer two and realizing that that's where a lot of the action's going to be for this sort of thing. It's really challenging to build something like this on layer one. So I think that's going to be when people make that leap. But yeah, I mean, you got anything else? No future. We're coming up on our 2 hours. It's
Holy
just
crap, yeah.
this time just flies by. I can just kind of like yammer on about Aavegotchi stuff all day. Literally, I could sit here for 12 hours and talk about it. But I know y'all have things to do, and you know, um, we'll probably have more alpha to talk about next week, hopefully, and we see a white paper of some sort come out in that time. That'd be awesome. Do you guys have anything else you want to announce or anything else you want to say before we finish up?
No, go out and buy raffle tickets. They're cheap now. This is the time to do it.
I was glad to finally make it onto one of these calls. Sunday night at this time is just a tough time for me, but I've wanted to pop in and chat with you guys for a while, so I was glad to make this work.
No, that's really cool, and like thanks for bringing your insights too, because like you have a very detailed view of the Gotchiverse as well, and you got your own insights, and yeah, thanks for sharing. I appreciate it. We all appreciate it. So.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, I was just going to chime in and say I was a little late getting here. I was planning on being here because I had the notification set and everything, but a friend of mine hit me up because, he's been interested in this shit for a while. Like, he does music, has been interested in, like, everything metaverse related. Like, they love the concept from what I've talked about with them. And, like, I mean, he's hyped, dude. He's trying to hop in. Like, he's like, as soon as that lending goes live, man, just let me know. So, like, honestly, I think there's a lot of people that are, like, interested but just don't have like the capital get involved, or they don't feel like they have enough to really participate. So yeah, I'm super hyped to see how everything plays out this next month and really the rest of the year.
This is going to be a big month, guys. You said it perfectly, Bearded. This is the calm before the storm, and I think that's why I feel a little bit antsy, a little bit anxious. Like I need more stuff. Like, give me more information. But I think we'll get it soon enough. And thank you, everyone else, for joining us tonight here. If this is your first time, we do this every Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. And yeah, I guess we'll probably see you again all next week. So
Take it easy,
Sounds good,
everybody.
man. Thanks for hosting it, as always.
Thanks,
Bye.
Happy.
Thanks, Happy.
of course. All right. Yeah, peace out.